Cassie Allen stood in front of the mirror in the 17th floor restroom of Dominion's architect, adjusting her last cornrow into place. Her sleek design framed her toffee-brown skin like art, each braid sharp, deliberate. She applied a light coat of clear lip gloss and took a breath. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. "They'll hear you today. You're not asking for permission, you're making the space." She pulled her blazer sleeves up slightly, just above her wrists, revealing a bracelet engraved with clean architectural angles. Confidence wasn't an accessory for Cassie. It was structure, load-bearing. She rolled her shoulders back and headed for the conference room, heels clicking in sync with her heartbeat. Inside, the room smelled faintly of citrus polish and stale coffee. Melvin Webb, lead partner, sat at the head of the long table. Graying temples, always frowning. His navy tie was tucked inside his vest as if even fashion didn't deserve to breathe around him. Across the room, a junior associate coughed into his sleeve. Cassie stepped forward with her tablet and a quiet fire in her walk. "Morning," she said, her voice smooth but firm. "I'm excited to share a proposal that merges two markets, affordable housing and high-end eco-design." Melvin didn't look up. "Make it quick. We're behind on the Owens Resort planning." Cassie smiled tightly. "This won't take long, just vision." As she began the presentation, showcasing a development blueprint with modern, eco-friendly units alongside affordable modular homes, Melvin's brow rose, not with interest but skepticism. "You're trying to mix low-income housing with private capital projects?" he asked flatly. "Cassie, this isn't a community shelter. This is Dominion's." Cassie's jaw flexed. "It's architecture with integrity, Melvin, and it's scalable. If we can design glass towers, we can also design dignity." He chuckled without humor. "You need to pick a lane, Allen. We're not running a charity." Cassie paused. Her gaze didn't waver. "Then maybe I'm in the wrong lane or the wrong firm." Melvin blinked. For the first time, he looked at her fully. And that's when Cassie knew it was time to leave. Melvin Webb stood just outside the conference room as Cassie exited, the tablet still clutched firmly in her hand. "Allen," he called, his voice sharp, tight with warning. Cassie turned, her expression calm but unreadable. He approached her with slow, heavy steps. "Be careful with your words. This isn't some design school critique. You're not here to challenge the foundation of how this company works. You're here to produce." She didn't flinch. "I'm here to build. That's what architects do." Melvin narrowed his eyes. "This industry is built on hierarchy and respect. You're smart, Cassie. Don't let passion make you reckless." "Thanks for the concern," she said, brushing past him. "But I'm more afraid of playing small than speaking up." By the time she returned to her desk, her pulse was steady, but the fire still burned behind her sternum. She sat, pulled out her phone, and stared for a moment. Then, with a sigh and a flick of determination, she opened her laptop. Click. Resume folder. Click. Portfolio. Click. Draft email. Within minutes, Cassie was applying to firms she'd admired for years, but had once hesitated to approach. The hesitation was gone. One firm caught her eye immediately, Prince Architectural Firm. Known for elite residential towers and museum-worthy public spaces. But what intrigued her most was their recent announcement of a new community development division. A shift no one saw coming. That's it, she thought. She hit send. 3 days later, an email came through. Subject, interview invitation, Prince Architectural Firm. And just like that, her world tilted. The tour of Prince Architectural was like stepping into a vision Cassie hadn't dared hope for. The building itself was a masterpiece. Steel beams exposed, glass walls etched with etched patterns of famous structures from around the world. A tall assistant led her down a corridor with hanging gardens outside the windows. "Mr. Prince is very hands-on," the woman said as they passed the open-plan design suites. "He oversees all new hires for the division." Cassie nodded, taking it all in. Glass staircases, reclaimed wood desks, a buzz of ideas everywhere. By the time the tour ended, she knew, this is where I belong. That evening, she typed up her resignation letter with a slow, purposeful rhythm. She walked into Melvin's office the next morning and placed it on his desk. He didn't look up right away. "Disappointed?" she asked quietly. He glanced up, his eyes cool. "No, just surprised it took you this long." Cassie nodded once, turned on her heel, and walked out, Head high, rhythm unbroken. Cassie stood in front of her open closet, a half-empty mug of lukewarm coffee in one hand and an indecision tightening in her chest. "This shouldn't feel like a date," she muttered, biting her bottom lip as she stared at the clean lines of her blazers and slacks. "It's a meeting, a business meeting, with a man who probably designed the building just to intimidate people." Today she would officially meet Ronald Prince, the elusive CEO behind Prince architectural firm. The same man known for his cold, calculated presence, a string of high-profile projects, and a reputation for demolishing weak pitches with a single raised brow. Cassie took a breath and closed her eyes. She clasped her hands and whispered, "God, guide my words, calm my nerves, and please don't let me sweat through my blazer." She opened her eyes with a smirk and reached for the suit that never let her down, her good luck suit. A deep charcoal gray pantsuit with crisp lines, tapered just right, paired with a white silk blouse and sharp black heels. Professional. Clean. Fierce. She slicked her cornrows with light oil, smoothing the sides with practiced ease, then added a subtle swipe of liner to emphasize her almond-shaped eyes. No gloss today. She needed clarity, not distraction. Cassie glanced at the mirror before grabbing her portfolio bag. "You belong in that room," she said aloud. "Now go show them why." As she walked into the Prince architectural lobby, the tension in her spine eased just slightly. She checked in with the receptionist, who offered her a soft smile. "Mr. Prince will meet you shortly in the West Conference Room." Cassie followed the assistant down a corridor lined with design sketches and framed blueprints. As they approached the room, she caught her reflection in the angled glass wall, a woman composed, sure-footed, but undeniably nervous. The assistant pushed the door open, revealing a tall man already inside, his back to the door, steel gray suit tailored with severe precision. He turned. Ronald Prince. His expression was unreadable, his smirk barely perceptible, like a man perpetually on the edge of amusement or disdain. "Miss Allen," he said coolly, "let's see if you're worth the hype." Cassie squared her shoulders and stepped inside. "Let's more," she said. Ronald gestured to the seat across from him without standing. "I've read your file, impressive resume, strong portfolio." He closed the folder in front of him slowly. "But I'm curious, why us?" Cassie folded her hands on the table, meeting his gaze. "Because your new division isn't just architecture, it's impact. That's where I belong." He tilted his head. "You left Dominions for impact? They pay top dollar, give flashy titles." "I didn't want a flashy title," she replied, voice even. "I wanted my work to mean something." A flicker passed through his gray eyes, gone before she could read it. "Idealism is expensive. Are you prepared for how slow and political community design can be? You'll fight more red tape than concrete." Cassie didn't blink. "I've fought worse. Being underestimated is daily practice for a black woman." He leaned back, fingers steepled. "Some would say that's a chip on your shoulder. And some mistake focus for defiance." Silence stretched, taut and charged. Then, he gave a faint nod. "You may be disruptive, Miss Allen. I prefer necessary." Ronald's smirk returned, sharper now but unrateable. As Cassie left the room, she couldn't shake the chill of his eyes or the curiosity lingering in her chest. She wasn't sure what just happened, but she wanted to find out. Cassie followed the HR director, a poised woman named Adrienne Tees, through the polished corridors of Prince Architectural Firm's West Wing. Sunlight spilled through tall window panels, casting geometric shadows across the hallway. "I have to say, Cassie," Adrienne said with a warm smile, "your interview made quite the impression." Cassie raised an eyebrow. "Did it?" Adrienne chuckled. "Mr. Prince rarely says much during first interviews, but he sent an internal note to approve your onboarding within the hour." Cassie nodded, carefully keeping her expression neutral, though her stomach fluttered. She wasn't expecting that kind of speed, especially from a man like Ronald Prince. Still, it only fueled her determination to earn her place. They stopped at a sleek glass door labeled CDD, Community Development Division. Adrienne opened it and stepped aside. "Welcome to your new home." Inside, the space was bright and collaborative. Warm wood floors, modular desks, suspended plant panels, and a central round table covered in sample boards and sketches. "Cassie Allen," Adrienne announced with pride. Meet your team. A tall man with chestnut skin and a ready smile stepped forward first. Elias Cross, he said, offering his hand. Lead structural engineer. I've already seen your green space layouts. You've got guts. Cassie shook his hand, a grin tugging at her lips. And you've got calluses. I respect that. Laughter followed. Then came a petite woman in tortoiseshell glasses. Janelle Carter, project coordinator. I keep things on time and under budget. Nice to meet you, Cassie said. That makes you my new best friend. Janelle gave her a bright smile. Already got you on my calendar. Cassie met a few more team members, drafting specialists, interns, and a city compliance consultant named Marco. Each friendly, each with a different spark. This wasn't a stuffy office culture like Dominion's. The room buzzed with creative freedom and purpose. Adrian gestured to the far left desk near the window. This is yours. Custom setup, dual monitors, drafting space. That plant's real, by the way. Don't kill it. Cassie chuckled, running her fingers across the desk surface. I'll do my best. Adrian leaned in with a smirk. Mr. Prince tends to pop in unannounced, so don't be alarmed if he looms silently behind you. Cassie rolled her eyes. Sounds motivating. As Adrian walked out, Cassie sank into her chair and exhaled. For the first time in months, maybe longer, she felt it, possibility. Elias pulled a rolling chair over and sat beside her. So what made you leave Dominions? That place is all marble and marketing. Cassie glanced toward the window. I needed to breathe, to build something that mattered. Elias studied her for a second, then nodded. You're in the right place. And, welcome to the circus. She laughed. Let's draw some chaos then. As the team resumed their chatter and planning, Cassie stared at the blank whiteboard next to her desk. New firm, new voices, new rhythm. And somewhere down the hall, Ronald Prince, the man with the frozen smirk and steel gray eyes. Something told her their story was only beginning. Later that afternoon, Janelle returned from a leadership meeting with wide eyes and a furrowed brow. You're not going to believe this, she whispered as she leaned over Cassie's desk. Ronald just assigned himself to co-review the Kensington renewal proposal. Cassie paused mid-sketch. Our project? Yours now, Elias added, overhearing. He hasn't personally overseen a CDD pitch. What did you say in that interview? Cassie shrugged, though her pulse quickened. Apparently, I was disruptive. When Ronald entered the workspace later that week, the room straightened instinctively. He strode toward Cassie's desk, sharp as a blueprint, and scanned the updated draft sheet pinned to the board. You're proposing a pedestrian promenade between the housing units? He asked, tone clipped. Cassie turned, chin lifted. Yes, shared outdoor space encourages community connection and foot traffic to the retail pods. He studied her, expression unreadable. And if the city pushes back on land use? Then we push harder, unless you think it's too idealistic. Their eyes locked, the silence brimming with challenge and something else. His gaze lingered a beat too long before he turned back to the plans. Carry on, he said, low, but neither of them walked away unaffected. A week later, the CDD team gathered in the glass-walled conference room on the 12th floor, the skyline of the city glittering behind them. The Kensington renewal project had reached its first major checkpoint, and tension hummed just beneath the surface like a taut cable. Cassie stood at the head of the table, gesturing toward the digital render projected behind her. We've adjusted the east-facing units for better sun exposure, she explained, and added vertical gardens along the retail corridor to manage runoff and bring a natural aesthetic into the design. Ronald sat opposite her, legs crossed, hands steepled. His steel gray eyes didn't miss a single detail. The vertical gardens reduce visibility from the street, he said evenly. You're sacrificing storefront presence for eco-aesthetics. Cassie held her ground. Not if we design the greenery to complement the window structure. It enhances visual appeal without compromising access. Or it adds another maintenance liability to an already tight budget, Ronald countered. Silence fell. Elias shifted beside Cassie, ready to jump in, but she raised a hand. We can prototype a trellis design that's modular and low maintenance, she said calmly. It's not an either-or, Mr. Prince. We can innovate without sacrificing function. A flicker of something passed over Ronald's face. Surprise? Respect? Proceed, he said finally. The meeting rolled on, but Cassie could feel his eyes on her, even when others spoke. Their disagreements were professional, but the tension laced through every word between them, too sharp, too loaded to ignore. As the team filed out, Ronald stayed seated, flipping through a physical copy of the proposal. Cassie gathered her notes, intentionally moving slower. You enjoy challenging me, he said without looking up. She glanced over, only when you need it. His lips curved, not quite a smile. I don't need it, I expect it. Cassie leaned down slightly, her tone cool. Good. Because I don't do silence. Their eyes locked again, full of sparks and distance. Then she turned and walked out, her heels echoing softly against the polished floor. Ronald remained still, eyes lingering on the door. He didn't like being challenged, but he liked her. Bria White stepped out of the black SUV with the grace of a woman born to power. Her cream-colored coat flowed behind her like a cape, her diamond engagement ring glinting under the early afternoon sun. She entered Prince Architectural Firm's lobby with practiced elegance, her heels barely making a sound on the polished marble floor. Miss White, the receptionist greeted with a smile. He's expecting you. I'm always expected, Bria replied, offering a flawless smile before stepping into the private elevator reserved for executives and board members. Bria White wasn't just Ronald Prince's fiancée. She was the daughter of one of the firm's largest private investors. With a background in PR and a degree from Stanford Law, she didn't waste time on emotion or fantasy. Her engagement to Ronald had been carefully cultivated. Two legacy names aligned for mutual gain. Love was optional. Influence wasn't. When she entered Ronald's office, she found him staring out the window, brows furrowed, fingers tapping rhythmically on the sill. You've been distracted, Bria said smoothly as she removed her gloves. The board has noticed. Ronald turned slowly. You've been speaking to the board behind my back? I advocate, darling, she replied. It's what I do best. She sat on the edge of his desk, crossing her legs. So who is she? He didn't answer immediately, which told her everything. Cassie Allen, Bria continued, tilting her head. The new architect, the one with the idealism. Ronald's jaw tensed. Bria's smile never faltered. I'll look into her. For the good of the partnership, of course. Ronald's voice was low. Don't do anything foolish, Bria. She stood, adjusting her coat. I never do foolish. I do what's necessary. As she left, Ronald exhaled slowly. He knew Bria well enough to recognize the gleam in her eyes. Cassie was now on her radar, and Bria never investigated without leaving a mark. Cassie sat at her desk, pencil tucked behind her ear, reviewing a set of material samples when Ronald appeared at her side, silent as always. Those brick textures will fade within 5 years, he said, tapping the corner of the board with his index finger. Cassie looked up, startled. Good morning to you too. He didn't smile. Consider a porcelain composite, more durable and water-resistant. Noted, she replied, then narrowed her eyes slightly. Did you walk across the floor just to tell me that? Ronald studied her, something unreadable behind his steel-gray gaze. I like to know how my team thinks. You've got a lot of people on this team, she said, voice even. But I only ever see you at my desk. He didn't respond to the jab, just offered the barest curve of a smirk and turned to leave. From across the office, Elias leaned back in his chair and caught Cassie's eye, arching an eyebrow. Cassie gave a small shake of her head and smiled, returning to her work. That Friday evening, Elias approached her desk with a flyer in hand. Hey, he said, slightly bashful. There's a community fundraiser tomorrow. Outdoor food trucks, live music. Donations go toward rebuilding the South District playground. Thought you might want to come. Cassie hesitated. Are you asking as a colleague or something else? Elias grinned. Maybe both. She laughed, the first time in days she felt warmth not tied to tension. Okay, text me the details. The fundraiser was alive with color and movement. Cassie arrived in a denim jumpsuit and sneakers, hair pulled into a high ponytail, her usual business armor swapped for something more relaxed. She found Elias near the grill station, already laughing with volunteers. "You clean up nice," he said as she approached. "You say that like I was dirty before." "Not at all, but I like seeing this side of you." They spent the next hour walking the booths, listening to music and sampling food. Cassie found herself leaning into Elias's energy, his grounded nature, his calm. When he took her hand as they watched a children's choir sing, it felt easy, natural. He turned to her. "You're rare, you know." Cassie looked at him, brows raised. "Because I eat funnel cake without shame?" He smiled. "Because you walk into rooms like you built the foundation beneath them." Before she could respond, he leaned in and kissed her. Slow, soft, without pressure. She didn't pull away. Ronald saw them before they saw him. He'd arrived at the fundraiser unannounced, invited by a city councilman he barely tolerated. He was halfway across the field when he spotted Cassie and Elias standing close by the performance stage, their hands intertwined, their bodies' language relaxed and familiar. Then came the kiss. Ronald's jaw clenched as he turned away, walking back to his car without saying a word. The following Monday, the temperature in the CDD workspace had dropped noticeably. Ronald stood at the head of the weekly strategy meeting, eyes colder than usual. "Cassie," he said without looking at her, "your revised plans lacked proper drainage modeling. I expect better from someone with your credentials." Cassie blinked. That model was reviewed and signed off by both compliance and engineering. "Then clearly someone missed something," Ronald replied, flipping the file shut. Elias stiffened in his chair, shooting a glance at Cassie. The rest of the room went quiet. After the meeting, Janelle pulled Cassie aside. "Okay, what happened?" "He's never that sharp with you." Cassie shrugged. Word traveled fast in a firm like theirs, and Ronald's sudden shift hadn't gone unnoticed. Cassie returned to her desk, a slow fire burning under her skin. This isn't high school, she thought, but even as she tried to shake it off, she couldn't ignore the truth. Ronald's walls weren't just made of steel. They were starting to crack. Cassie checked her calendar twice when the invite came through. Lunch, Bria White. Subject, women in design. Mentorship, noon at Viata Mentorship. Cassie thought as she stared at the screen. Bria White wasn't exactly known for community building among women. The woman was a brand, flawless, precise, and politically tied to every boardroom that mattered in the city. The message had been wrapped in grace, but Cassie felt the tension humming between the lines. Still, curiosity was stronger than caution, and Cassie had never run from anything that needed facing. Viata was all marble columns and velvet seating, the kind of place that served water from glass decanters and gave you a look if you asked for ranch. Bria was already seated when Cassie arrived, elegant as always in a pale blue silk blouse and pearl drop earrings, her engagement ring catching the light with calculated glint. "Cassie," she greeted with a warm smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so glad we could do this." "Me too," Cassie replied, easing into the seat across from her. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "Well, with all the buzz around your project and your, let's say, close working dynamic with Ronald, I thought it might be nice to offer a little guidance, woman to woman." Cassie offered a tight smile. "Appreciate that." Bria picked up her wine glass, swirling it like she was rehearsing a line. "This firm, and everything connected to it, has a rhythm. It moves through legacy, through connections, through image. Ronald understands that. So do I." Cassie didn't speak. She didn't need to. Bria's tone softened, but her gaze sharpened. It's easy, when you're new, to misread attention as interest, especially from a man like Ronald, who keeps his cards very close. Cassie leaned in slightly, voice cool and composed. "And it's just as easy to assume a woman only got her seat because someone gave it to her." Bria's jaw twitched, but only slightly. "I didn't mean to offend. I only meant to suggest that you should know your place, Cassie. This firm has layers. So does the man who runs it, and so does the engagement we have, so you may be misunderstanding." Cassie smiled then, not politely, but slowly, fully. "Thanks for the advice, but I don't build from fear. I build from truth. If that's disruptive to your rhythm, maybe you need a new song." She stood, laying her napkin down with care. Bria watched her go, lips still curved but eyes flickering with warning. The game had officially changed, and Cassie wasn't playing by anyone's rules but her own. Cassie found Ronald in his office late that evening, the city lights casting sharp reflections against the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. He stood with his back turned, hands tucked into his pockets, staring out as if the skyline might offer him answers he hadn't yet found. She didn't knock. She simply stepped in, heels quiet but her presence deliberate. "She came to see me." Ronald turned slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes said enough. "Bria," Cassie clarified. "Viata. Lunch. Mentorship, though it felt more like a press conference with threats." He moved toward his desk, letting out a quiet sigh. She shouldn't have done that. But she did. And honestly, Ronald, I don't know what's worse. Her warning me to stay in line, or you staying silent while your feelings keep complicating everything. His eyes flickered, jaw tightening. "Cassie." "No," she interrupted, stepping closer. "Let's be real for once. You show up at my desk more than any other lead. You're involved in every decision I make, and every time we argue, I feel like it's not just about blueprints." He said nothing, not yet. "And now your fiancé, your strategic investment, is warning me to know my place. So tell me, Ronald, what place am I supposed to know?" He looked at her then, finally fully. His voice was low. "I'm drawn to you. I've tried to ignore it. I thought it would pass." Cassie folded her arms, guarding herself. "But it didn't." "No," he admitted. "You challenged me in ways I didn't know I needed. But he hesitated, looking away. "I'm locked into something with Bria. It's more than a relationship. It's a merger, legacy, family alliances, image. If I walk away, I lose more than just a ring." Cassie nodded, eyes steady. "Then stay locked in, but don't drag me into that prison with you." Ronald flinched ever so slightly. She stepped back, her tone softening but her resolve tightening. "You want to be with Bria? Then be with her. I need space to focus on what matters. I'm building something real with Elias. He shows up without confusion." Ronald's silence was heavy. "I'm not going to be the woman you almost chose," she added. "I'm not a shadow you visit when the lights are off." She turned and walked out, heart pounding but head held high. Over the next few weeks, Cassie buried herself in the Kensington project. She and Elias spent long hours at city planning meetings, walking neighborhoods, meeting with residents to finalize proposals. He brought her tea without asking. He laughed at her dry humor. He looked at her like she wasn't just talented, but seen. With Elias, everything was in the open. No riddles, no power plays. And slowly, piece by piece, Cassie laid new emotional bricks around her heart, this time with boundaries, purpose, and intention. Ronald, meanwhile, stayed silent. But Cassie felt his eyes on her during every meeting, watching, regretful, still tethered to a life he couldn't seem to escape. Cassie sat beside Elias in the design lab, eyes locked on the final rendering of her latest proposal. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, nerves tapping at the edges of her confidence. "This is your moment," Elias said, nudging her gently. "You've led this project, Cass. You should be the one to present it to the board." She looked at him, then back at the screen. "You really think they'll listen to me? I'm not exactly their usual choice." "You're not their usual anything," Elias said, grinning. "And that's why they have to listen." Cassie drew in a deep breath. He was right. She had poured her vision, sweat, and soul into this design. It was time to speak for herself. The boardroom was silent, except for the hum of the projector. Cassie stood at the head of the table, the Kensington Renewal Project displayed behind her. Her voice was steady as she outlined a vision that married urban design with community restoration. Green spaces, small business zones, and sustainable housing that didn't sacrifice beauty. One by one, the room's skepticism softened. Even the older executives, who usually cared more about investor ROI than social impact, leaned in. There was a weight in her words, a clarity of purpose they couldn't ignore. When she finished, a beat of silence followed, then polite applause, followed by real questions, respectful ones. At the back of the room, Ronald stood with his arms crossed, eyes locked on her. He said nothing, but pride flickered in his expression, shadowed immediately by something more private: regret. Across town that evening, Bria White stood in her penthouse office, skimming through a packet of printed emails and blueprint files. She hadn't meant to go digging, not at first. But the more Ronald withdrew, the more curious she became. The files didn't lie. Cassie's name was on nearly every innovation driving the firm's sudden public acclaim. The redesigned layouts, the vertical green spaces, the adaptive commercial zoning, all hers. Bria closed the file and stared out over the city. She knew the look Ronald had given Cassie at the last event. She'd seen that kind of look before, just never directed at her. When she arrived at his office the next morning, she didn't wait for an invitation to enter. "You never looked at me the way you look at her," she said without preamble, dropping the file on his desk. Ronald didn't flinch. He reached for the documents slowly, flipping through them in silence. "You know this between us was never about love," he said finally. "It's an arrangement, one that benefits both our families." Bria folded her arms, chin tilted. "That used to be enough." He looked up. She asked, softer now, "Do you love her?" He didn't answer. Bria's eyes glinted, not with rage, but resignation. "Good luck," she said coolly. "From the looks of it, Elias seems to have her attention." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "And for the record, I want something real too. Even if I didn't think I did." As the door clicked shut behind her, Ronald leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the file in his hand. His silence was no longer a shield, it was a confession. And Cassie's name was carved into every corner of his unspoken truth. Cassie stood just outside the conference room, the weight of the moment still settling in her chest. Her proposal had not only passed, the board had unanimously offered her a leadership role in the Community Development Division. As the others filtered out with congratulations and polite smiles, Ronald approached quietly. "Congratulations, Ms. Allen," he said, his voice even, but his eyes unsettled. "Thank you," she replied, her tone polite but clicked. For a moment, they stood in the silence between titles and truths. Ronald's gaze lingered. "You earned this," he said. More gently now. "You've changed this place." Cassie offered a nod, the tension between them crackling just beneath the surface. She turned before he could say more. Later that evening, Elias found her reviewing specs in the design lab, alone. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said, resting a hand lightly on the desk. Cassie smiled. "It doesn't feel real yet." Elias looked at her, sincerity in every line of his face. "I like you, Cassie, a lot. I've never had to guess where I stand with you, and I'd like to be the one who doesn't make you guess either." She hesitated, heart conflicted. "I feel something too, Elias." "I do, but I need more time." He nodded. "I can wait, just say the word." 2 weeks into her new leadership role, Cassie's world tilted. A contractor flagged a serious issue. The foundation depth on the Kensington site was miscalculated. If left unaddressed, it would compromise structural integrity and delay the entire project. Cassie stood frozen in the middle of the drafting floor, the weight of the mistake crushing down on her. This was her first major build. Her name was on every blueprint. By evening, she was still in the office, poring over specs and soil reports with trembling hands, when the door swung open. Ronald entered, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded. "I heard," he said simply, no smugness in his tone. "Let's fix it." They worked side by side into the early morning, reviewing schematics, calling geotech engineers, drafting revised models. It was the first time in weeks they spoke without tension, only focus. Sometime after midnight, Cassie sat back, rubbing her temples. "Thank you," she murmured. Ronald looked at her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "You shouldn't have to carry it alone." Their eyes locked. The quiet wrapped around them like silk. He leaned in, slowly, carefully, as if waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. But just before their lips met, he stopped. Inches apart, breath uneven. Then he stood, stepping back. "We should get some sleep," he said hoarsely. Cassie said nothing. But everything had changed. The next morning, Cassie found him in his office. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. "I need to say this," she began, "before anything gets more complicated." Ronald looked up, weary but attentive. I won't be your secret, she said gently, or your escape route from a life you built for the wrong reasons. He swallowed hard. I made a choice, she continued, and it's Elias. Not because I don't feel something for you, but because with him, everything's out in the open. No shadows, no guilt. Ronald nodded slowly, pain flickering in his eyes, but he didn't protest. Later that week, he and Bria met at her private office. It's time for us to end this, isn't it? Bria asked quietly. Ronald gave a single nod. It's been time. Their breakup was clean, with no headlines or boardroom gossip. Bria rebranded herself under her own firm, launching a consultancy for women in corporate strategy. She left the engagement with her reputation intact and her future in her own hands. As for Ronald, he returned to his office, older in the eyes than his age could justify, watching from afar as Cassie's vision took shape. She didn't look back, not because she didn't care, but because she finally knew where she was going. 6 months later, the Kensington Renewal Project opened its doors with a soft ribbon-cutting ceremony and a crowd filled with city officials, families, small business owners, and students from the nearby elementary school. But Cassie didn't care about the flashbulbs or the speeches. She cared about the children running through the new community garden, the elderly couple who teared up touring their affordable but dignified apartment, the mural painted by local artists on the outer wall, celebrating the neighborhood's roots. The praise poured in. News outlets called it a masterclass in modern, inclusive urban design. City leaders requested meetings. National architecture journals requested interviews. But Cassie stayed grounded, always returning to her team, to the people who helped shape every inch of it. To Elias, he stood beside her at the dedication, hand in hers, pride glowing in his eyes. He never tried to overshadow her, only reflect her brilliance. You did it, he whispered. We did it, she thought. Later that week, long after the ceremony, Ronald Prince walked the Kensington grounds alone. No entourage, no fanfare. He ran his hand along the smooth railing of the pedestrian bridge Cassie had insisted on. Stood in the center of the public square, beneath the trees she fought to preserve. It was beautiful, thoughtful, enduring. He stood still for a long time, taking it in. And then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. Just a little. Not with regret this time, but with understanding. Because for once, something had been built not out of legacy or reputation, but love, and it would outlast them all. 2 weeks after the Kensington grand opening, the office was still buzzing with praise and proposals. Cassie was in her element, leading, mentoring, sketching late into the night with a passion that pulsed through her like current. So when Elias sat her down at their favorite coffee spot, hands wrapped tightly around his mug, she wasn't prepared. I've been offered a position, he began carefully, in Denver, lead sustainability strategist. It's big, Cass. Game-changing for me. Cassie blinked. Denver? He nodded, but didn't smile. And you want to take it? I said yes. The words hit her like cold wind. She leaned back, stunned. I thought we were building something here, together. We were. We are, Elias said softly. But this is a chance I can't turn down. And you're soaring here. I wouldn't ask you to leave that behind. Cassie's chest tightened. Then let's make it work long distance. Elias shook his head gently. That's not going to work, Cass. Her brows knit together, voice rising. Why are you giving up so easily? I'm not giving up, he said, calm but resolute. I'm giving space to what's real. I know you love me, but it's not that fiery, gut-deep kind of love. It's steady. I gave you safety. But you need someone who challenges you, who pushes you beyond your limits. I'm not that person, and you know it. Cassie swallowed hard, voice cracking. Elias, we can figure this out. He looked at her tenderly. Ronald will be waiting, Cass, after the dust settles, after you've had time to forget about us. He still looks at you like no one else exists. She froze, tears welling in her eyes. When are you leaving? She whispered. In a week. A single tear slipped down her cheek. You're not giving me time to process this. He reached out, brushing her cheek with his thumb, then leaned in to press a soft kiss to her forehead. I'll see you again before I go. And then he stood. Cassie didn't move, didn't call after him. Just watched as he walked away, taking a piece of her with him. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't know what to build next. Ronald glanced up from his desk as a quiet knock broke the late afternoon silence. Elias stepped inside, resignation letter in hand. Ronald raised a brow. Is there something wrong with the Kensington project? Elias shook his head. No, the project's solid. Cassie's done an exceptional job. Ronald leaned back in his chair. Then what brings you here? I'd accepted a position in Denver, Elias said. His voice calm, but there was something heavier beneath. Lead strategist on a sustainability initiative. Ronald's expression didn't shift, but his eyes sharpened. And Cassie? She's staying here. We've ended our relationship. Silence filled the space between them. Ronald's jaw tightened ever so slightly. Elias stepped forward, laying the letter down. I didn't come to make this awkward. I came because you need to hear this. If you're still waiting to the perfect moment, stop. There won't be a third chance. Ronald's gaze darkened. Take this time while she's healing, Elias said gently. Figure out what you want more, her or the life your family boxed you into. Because she won't wait forever. She shouldn't. For a long moment, Ronald said nothing. Then he rose and walked around the desk. He extended his hand. Elias shook it. Good luck in Denver, Ronald said, sincere but quiet. You too, Elias replied. Then turned and walked out, leaving behind more than a job. Cassie took the rest of the week off. She didn't answer emails. She just breathed, finally letting herself feel the weight of goodbye. By the time Elias boarded his flight to Denver, she'd cried, reflected, and let go. Not because she stopped caring, but because she had to. She returned to work the following Monday, stepping into the CDD studio with quiet strength and a familiar focus in her eyes. Janelle handed her a new set of blueprints. You've got a new project. Mixed-use district, Northside. They asked for your leadership. Cassie smiled faintly and walked toward her desk. Moments later, Ronald stepped into the room, a rare warmth in his voice. You ready to be challenged again? Cassie looked up at him, her expression calm, knowing. She smiled. I'm ready. 9 months passed, 9 months of late-night design meetings, challenging debates, shared triumphs, and an electric undercurrent that neither of them acknowledged, but never fully escaped. Cassie and Ronald had built more than just developments. They had built trust, ease, chemistry that simmered just beneath the surface of their professional rhythm. And then, on an ordinary Thursday evening, after a site visit, Ronald broke the rhythm. Dinner? He asked casually, holding the door open to the firm's private lounge. Cassie looked up from her tablet. Dinner for the team? No, he said, lips curving into the faintest grin. Just you and me. She blinked. Are you asking me out? I'm asking you on a real date, Cassie. She stared at him, stunned, and then he added, I had a long conversation with my father and the board members last week. Told them I want a public relationship with you. No secrets, no spin. She nearly choked on her drink. You did what? Ronald smirked. I told them if they had a problem with it, I'd step down. And take you with me. Cassie gaped. How did that go? Well, we'll see HR tomorrow about your raise and new title. So I'd say I won. Cassie narrowed her eyes playfully. And what makes you think I want a relationship with you, Mr. Prince? He stepped closer, voice low. Because you're in love with me. Even if you haven't said it yet. Cassie opened her mouth to protest, but before she could, he leaned in and kissed her. Slow, warm, sure. And that kiss said what words hadn't. He wasn't building walls anymore. He was building a future. With her. 2 months later, on a breezy Sunday afternoon, Ronald invited Cassie to visit his family estate just outside the city, a sprawling property lined with old oak trees, manicured rose gardens, and a sparkling lake that shimmered beneath the sun. Cassie wore a flowing cream dress and sandals, her cornrows pinned back in a soft updo. Ronald walked beside her, hand in hand, the quiet between them filled with ease and knowing glances. They strolled through the garden paths, pausing near a cluster of blooming hydrangeas. Just beyond the hedge, the lake came into view, calm, framed by weeping willows and a curved stone bench. Cassie exhaled in awe. This place is beautiful, peaceful. Ronald glanced around them, then met her eyes. Do you think this would be a great location for a wedding? She stopped walking. Slowly, she turned to face him. Brows raised in disbelief. Wait, what? He was already reaching into his jacket pocket, eyes warm with something far deeper than amusement. Then, in one fluid motion, he dropped to one knee on the grass. Cassie Allen, he said softly, holding out a stunning diamond ring wrapped in platinum and surrounded by vintage detail. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to her eyes as she covered her mouth, nodding furiously. Yes, she cried, laughing through her tears. Yes, Ronald. He stood, slipped the ring on her finger, and pulled her into a kiss, gentle and filled with every word they hadn't said but always felt. They married in late spring, right in that very garden, surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues who had watched their journey bloom. And as Cassie stood with Ronald beneath the canopy of willow trees, she realized, some love stories don't just change your life. They rebuild it. Brick by brick. Together, 10 years had passed. The garden near the lake, once a quiet backdrop to a question and a promise, was now alive with the laughter of children and the scent of fresh magnolias. Cassie and Ronald's wedding bench remained under the willows, now surrounded by soft grass trails their children had worn with play. Cassie sat on that very bench, barefoot, her youngest, 4-year-old Ava, curled in her lap, playing with the silver bracelet Cassie always wore. Not far off, their 7-year-old son Caleb ran through the grass with a kite, his big sister, 9-year-old Naomi, shouting directions as she chased behind him. Ronald appeared at Cassie's side carrying a tray of lemonade, his graying temples giving him an even sharper charm. They've got your energy, he teased, setting the tray down with a grin. Cassie smiled, leaning into him. And your stubborn streak. He laughed, then kissed the top of Ava's head. Not a bad combo. In the years since their wedding, the Prince Allen name had become synonymous with bold, community-centered architecture. Cassie now helmed the Community Development Division as partner, and Ronald had shifted into a more advisory role. His greatest pride no longer the towers with his name, but the life they'd built together. 3 children, a lake house filled with laughter, blueprints covered in crayon doodles. Love that had evolved into something even stronger than passion, partnership, legacy, and joy. Cassie looked out at their children, then up at the sky painted in gold. We built this, she whispered. Ronald squeezed her hand. Yes, he said. We did. And in that moment, with the wind teasing the trees and their children's laughter echoing in the air, Cassie knew. Every blueprint, every risk, every broken wall had led them here, to a love that lasted, to a home that was never just a place, but a life crafted together. The end. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow with like, share, and subscribe.